Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as always by Mr. Tucker Hazen. We're here today for a very exciting video because Tucker and I have both beaten Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I got excited looking at your physical copy and I got a little flustered there, got a little frazzled. I only have the digital.
I can caress it. That's something you can't do.
I just have to caress my system.
I can hold hands with Samus Aran. Look.
That's incredible.
Hi,
I could as well.
Whoa, that's deep.
Many times over, actually. I could hold hands with Silex.
No, here's the question.
Yeah.
As of the fact that you have those amiibo on your desk, is this just something that you wanted, like, within your field of vision to bring you great joy, or were you thinking about using them as prop comedy specifically for this video?
No, what I've really been thinking about is that this is just an insufficient way to display all the money.
Absolutely, 100% is.
and I had just taken all the Metroid ones off because I have all the Metroid amiibo now again. So I was sending a friend of the show, Brendan, a picture. And then I'm like, I need to figure out something how to display these. But Tucker, much like the development cycle of Metroid Prime 4 went on for too long, we've gone on for too long without talking about the game.
We like to take our time, Abram.
That's true. Like Retro Studios. Obviously, this is a very monumental release for the Nintendo community.
Absolutely.
But moreover, I think it's a monumental release for both
I would say it's top 3, like, most anticipated, most, like, hyped up game releases.
I think it sort of exists in that space at, like, a hypothetical Mario Galaxy 3 would exist in, of like Metroid Prime 4, Mario Galaxy 3. These are the they'll never happen sequels, and we got one. And you and I feel very differently about it. And so I think it's going to be a fun conversation. Not that I think either of us are going to budge an inch, but because I think we sort of represent the full gamut of perspectives on this game. And I think that hopefully there's a lot that we can kind of learn from each other. So Tucker, how do you feel about this game?
I first want to point out that in the spirit of friendliness, of cooperation, I put on my closest Samus-colored shirt for this interview. I was looking at my shirts. I think this is like the only like warm-toned shirt I own. Like most things I own are like some green or blue or black or something like that.
You have your famous corn shirt.
I actually threw that away yesterday.
Oh, really?
You lived with me. You've known me for a long time. Yeah. So I don't know how it happens. Little holes appear in my shirts. Yeah. Just all the time. I look down like by my belly button. I'm like, hey, look, there's a little hole there. And there was too many holes in the corn shirt. So I threw that guy away. But enough about the corn shirt. It's time to talk about Metroid Prime 4. Metroid Prime is a game that we've had a couple videos, done a couple videos about. You and I have talked quite a bit about. And I think that for me is the notorious game that I like less than everyone else. It's a game that I think the most about in terms of how my taste is different from other people and how it can sometimes be hard for me to understand why someone might connect so deeply to something that I definitely don't. And Prime 4 I was always interested in, given the fact that it's a 20 years later sequel, ostensibly. The last time they made a Metroid Prime game, a new Metroid Prime game, was 2007 for Corruption.
Yeah, Corruption was 2007.
So for a new mainline Metroid Prime game, almost 20 years. And Retro had made games in between then, the Donkey Kong Country games, that I really do like quite a bit. And so I was always hopeful that 20 years of experience and learning and new consoles and all of that and new team members would really give Metroid Prime 4 a forward-looking feel, fitting into the wider ethos of the Nintendo Switch and forward generation, which is, let's rethink what makes these series important. Let's keep that special sauce, but make sure that we can keep the old fans happy, bring in new ones. And I think they tried that for Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah.
But as the game exists, I find it difficult. And it would be really interesting to see how the legacy of this game pans out over time. I think that they only halfway succeeded in either camp, in that I think there's too much stuff that is trying to appeal to new people to fully appease the hardcore fans that just want it to be the same. And I don't think there's enough of that new stuff. It's too similar to the original game to bring in new people. So it's this awkward middle ground. And I think so many of the ideas in this game, to me, come off as half-baked or poorly stitched together, that I have a very hard time naming one thing about this game that isn't, and I'm going to use this word derogatorily, but I don't necessarily mean it, but like the superficial elements of the score and the visuals and the performance and these things.
Yeah.
Those elements I can and will praise as we discuss the game. But when it comes to like the core of the game, its design, its structure, the gameplay, the pacing, the narrative, I think these things are largely very poorly thought through. And now that I've seen the end of the game, I mean, it doesn't end in a particularly strong way either. So like, there's just not a lot for me to praise about this. And the unfortunate part is this was one of the most frustrating video game playing experiences I've ever had. I was so disappointed by so many of the decisions made here that I don't. It's a very frustrating experience for me playing this game.
Yeah, it's a bummer because I was hoping that this game was going to end up being something that could sort of help you understand what I like so much about these games.
Yeah, 100%.
But I don't really think it is.
That's what I was hoping for too. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really think it is that. I mean, I don't really want this conversation to be a referendum on the discourse or reviews of this game or whatever. But I think there was sort of a sense that I had.
We can do whatever we want, Abram.
It's true, but I want to stay close to the game because I think a lot of discourse around the game is like not that. But I think that the idea of the game that I had coming into it was that it was, if anything, going to be the sort of game that people like yourself would love and people like myself wouldn't be so high on, which is to say people who are maybe more skeptical of Metroid Prime, more a fan of something like a Metroid Dread, whereas someone like myself who holds the Prime games in particular in very high regard might not like it as much. But that doesn't seem to be the case at all, really, because I think that the reality of this game is that it is. You mentioned you were hoping it'd be forward looking, but I think if anything, it's the inverse. Yeah, I think it looks back a lot. And so for me, because I love those games very deeply and very personally, I really did love my time with Prime 4. I really do love it, but that's not necessarily me saying that I think your perspective on the game is wrong. In fact, I have a lot of issues with it. I just think that a lot of them feel kind of low impact for me. I think that a lot of what
the design and narrative and combat and structure and
well, a lot of those things I either like or find the issues with to not be particularly significant to my experience. I think that the storytelling is the one place where I think are both going to be very critical of the game.
Sure.
But otherwise, I think it really speaks to my sensibilities. But that doesn't necessarily mean I look at this as sort of the unimpeachable game that I feel Prime 1 is. Like, I think, when you and I have conversations about Prime 1, I really would stand up for the construction of that game. I don't think I would stand up for the construction of Beyond in the same way.
Yeah. And I think the narrative is the best place to start, because I think that, to me, is where the game feels like it's trying to take a pretty big step forward. Now, granted, under the my perspective is coming from someone who has not played Metroid Prime 2 and 3, which I know lean a little bit more into narrative and characters and cutscenes and things, set pieces that Metroid Prime 1, the only one before this that I had played, doesn't. And the game presents from its opening moments as something that is this narrative forward action spectacle game. There's a greater emphasis on dialogue and cutscenes and voice work and multiple characters, of course, that you talk through throughout the game. And I think that the opening is decently strong in that area. Now, I do have to say that on like an experiential level, didn't hit me particularly hard, because I've played that twice at the Nintendo Switch 2 experience and at the at PAX. It's also what like all the trailers were pulling from mostly, and so like same as landing the ship and going down that corridor and shooting the two guys and then fighting that boss. I'm like, not only had I seen this, I think it's like it's fine. It's an intro cutscene to a sci-fi game. But I think that section to me is where I thought the game would more be leaning into, and you can feel in like moments that the game's trying to like recapture this energy of being something that is more akin to a narrative focused sci-fi first person adventure game. But it's really a half measure, and it's certainly peters out by the end of the game. They try to recapture some of its energy, and it really falls flat. That narrative was one of the things that throughout the game I kept feeling this push and pull of like, I can see that they're trying to take a step forward here. But
Yeah.
whether it's, you know, them trying to hold that back so it's more similar to older Metroid Prime games, or like maybe their skill isn't really in that area, because I mean, I think that's probably the case. Retro just didn't really seem to know what they wanted to do with how narrative focused they wanted this game to be.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's three distinct types of storytelling in the game that I think are wildly different in how successful they are.
Yeah.
One is sort of this more traditionally presented cutscene style narrative.
Yeah. There's very little of it, but it's there.
There's very little of it, but I think what is there is done very poorly, frankly.
Sure.
Then there is the sort of storytelling through playing, which we'll obviously talk about extensively. But then the type of storytelling that actually...
By which you mean world building, the scanning, the environmental storytelling, those
all of that stuff. The way that the game sort of interacts with you while playing, anything that falls in that bucket. And then the third type of storytelling that I think that this game actually did a great job of bringing to the forefront more, which is this sort of archaeological, for lack of a better word, storytelling that you have in all the Prime games.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know, you have a game like Metroid Prime 1 that's sort of interested in the fate of the Chozo race, and you can kind of scan around Talon 4 and you can figure out what happened to them, but that's never really worked for me just because that sort of felt like a totally separate consideration for what Samus was doing. Which it obviously isn't, but you play a game like Prime 1 that has no directed narrative really, outside of a very overarching simple premise. To me, I'm always like, the Chozo stuff just sort of felt like window dressing, or sort of felt like the context the context I was in, but didn't really feel that motivating to me to learn about. I think that Prime 4 does a better job of making the struggle of the Lamorne an actual foregrounded part of the game, and made me feel more interested in becoming involved in their story.
Sure.
And so that worked for me, but I just think that the stuff that's most directed, the stuff that's most pertinent to Samus, to Sylux, to the Galactic Federation Marines, all of this stuff is just poorly executed. And by the way, this is entirely spoiler filled, so click off if you want to be in the game. Yeah. But I think that the game tries to balance all of these things.
Yeah.
But and I think that the act of playing and the Lamorne stuff is in much better, tighter conversation. I think that
I think that's true.
And I think it's better realized. I think it's where their strengths lie. Sure. But then I think you get to this stuff with Samus and Sylux, and to me, above writing, above anything, it's a presentational issue. I was reminded a lot of Pokemon, actually, while playing.
Whoa.
Because I think that there's this sense among Pokemon fans that these are games in the modern moment that need voice acting. And I think the reason a lot of people say that is because the way the cutscenes in Pokemon are presented make the absence of voice acting so obvious.
Yes.
That's Prime 4. That's a problem with Prime 4.
Yeah.
Samus being entirely silent as she is in the game does not work at all with the way they want to present cutscenes in this game. I'm not saying that Samus necessarily needed to talk. I'm saying that either the way they went about trying to have cutscenes and needed to change, or Samus needed to change, one or the other. But right now, these two things are bashing up against each other, and it becomes very awkward.
Yeah, 100%. I think that I want to dive into each of those elements, because I think I ultimately end up feeling a little bit differently, though I agree that the strengths of those three things, I agree, are in ascending order of quality. But talking about Samus, that was one of the first things that I really noticed about this game. Again, coming from the perspective of someone who is a fan of Metroid, I've played almost every 2D Metroid game, and I like all of them. I haven't played Other M, which I know is, and I haven't played Prime 2 or 3, and those three games are like the more narrative focused. I've got that with the actual case. You got that fucking black, that fucking
629. Look at that.
Oh, wow, that's incredibly informative. Amazing. Samus, and the fact that she doesn't talk. That was one of the first things I really noticed about this game, because with the game presenting as this spectacle action experience, especially at the beginning, and then continually over the course of the game introducing active characters that are that the writing is attempting to endear you to, attempting to make this fun little band of characters that Samus is a part of. I think a big part of the reason why the narrative of this game falls flat is because Samus is not only a quiet protagonist, but in this game an entirely silent protagonist. And to me, this makes her feel non-human. She doesn't feel like a character to me. I think part of the reason, like, one thing I kept thinking is, like, if she was a robot, or if she was narratively mute and the other characters knew this about her, there'd be just that little extra tinge of context for me to be like, this is intentional. But as it feels, it feels like they wrote a game for a protagonist that is inspiring, that is a sort of glue to hold together this group of characters that are kind of disparate, that has this active history and this legendary status to her. And I know that because I know that there are other Metroid Prime games, but what they present in this game is other characters continually telling us that this character is amazing and exceptional, and they care so much about her. But Samus herself never reflects any of that. And it makes it very difficult for me to want to engage with the personalities of these characters when the core protagonist, frankly, does not seem to care about the other characters. She saves their lives, but she does that through gameplay and not through personality. I'm like, I feel like I made the choice to save this person. Not, like, what does Samus get out of saving these people? Miles will, like, fix up or install her chip, which we will talk about that. But the other characters feel ancillary to the goals that Samus has, which are largely go get the 5 MacGuffins. And so it creates this really awkward tension where I'm like, I cannot get invested in this world and these characters that you're presenting to me, because Samus, I will flat out say it, is not a character. She does not respond to things. She barely even nods. It's not even she'll give a hearty, like, military nod, like sharp nod. She'll do like a blink and you miss it. Like, did the model glitch there? Like, she's very weird, and it's a big part of why I find this game hard to emotionally invest in.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I feel very invested in it, but it's not because of the way Samus is portrayed, for sure. And, you know, speaking as somebody that has played all these games, this is actually my biggest disappointment for me. This is my high impact issue with the game.
Sure.
Because it's sort of it's become escalatingly odd that this is how they present Samus in the Prime games.
Yeah.
Because if you go back to the first game, there's no one for her to interact with, so you never even really question the fact that she's not speaking. The second game is interesting because it's not voiced. None of the characters in the game are voiced. There are these Luminoth characters who you speak to, largely just to give Samus exposition. And then there's this very funny moment in the sort of abrupt end of the game where, after she has saved this race of creatures, the Luminoth, from certain doom and the eradication of their race, she literally waves to them and steps through a portal and leaves the planet, and the game ends.
And guess what? Sounds a little familiar.
And I think that there are moments in Prime 4 where I feel the relationship better, because I think that there's moments when Retro leans into the type of cutscene direction they were good at in Prime 3 and they're good at in Prime 4, which are the ones that are more focused on action. Sure. I think, for instance, part of the reason that the stuff with Miles works for me quite well is because Miles and Samus are very different people in action. And when you get them in a situation where their actions are what is moving forward your time in Fury Green, you're fighting alongside this goofy, like fuck up, smart, trying too hard, earnest guy. The distance that he is as a person from Samus and the different ways they move around the world creates an interesting storytelling language.
Sure. Yeah.
But then you get Samus in a situation where she's with more hardened, more on her level Marines, and there's no contrast between them in action. And Retro puts them in a situation where we're using more traditional cinematic language of these shot, reverse shot dialogue scenes, and the reverse is always Samus saying nothing. It doesn't speak...
And largely in those scenes, doing nothing.
Yeah.
Which, to your point, is if she's like sliding and dodging and like hiding behind a thing and shooting a missile, it's like, yeah, that's Samus Aran. That's what she's good at, and that is what characterizes her. Is her skill, her acumen, her confidence, her physical confidence. But that's not the majority of the cutscenes in this game.
Yeah.
The majority of the cutscenes with the other characters are shot and reverse shot dialogue sequences, where also, to the point of the writing not matching who Samus is as a character and that feeling like a massive disconnect, a lot of the cutscenes are written to where the characters are asking things of Samus, and then she doesn't respond. And again, let's think about this. Why doesn't she respond? She can talk. She just she feels like a dickhead. She feels like she's being rude to them or dismissive almost. And like, that is like, I'm like, I don't relate to this person. Not only because she's a military person, which is not something I have experience with, not because she is a quiet person, which is something that I'm not particularly, but because
I wish she's...
But because she's in these scenarios with people that the game presents as that she, at least some level, cares about. And she refuses to. She is physically able to. She refuses to respond in sequences where they are explicitly asking her. The dialogue asks her, what do you think about this? And then she just stands there and they move on to the next line. It's so confusing.
Yeah, there's this sort of uninterrogated premise, I think, in a lot of discussion around Metroid games about what a Metroid game is or what a Metroid game feels like or should be.
Yeah,
I think I have a much less prescriptive set of requirements for that than a lot of hardcore fans.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing that is
Metroid fans are very prescriptive about what the series should be.
Yes. One thing that is sort of a non-negotiable for me is feeling like I'm really invested in the world, close to the world. And I think that these cutscenes distance me from it because, I'm really trying to avoid a lot of what I kind of feel is fan fiction about the development of this game. But I do think that in the way that these cutscenes unfold, I look at them and where my mind goes is not into the text, but it's out of it to think, did EPD7 say Samus can't talk?
Sure.
Because I actually think that, you got a character like Duke in the game, one of the Marines you meet, who has a very accomplished voice actor who is in Deathloop, among other things. Actually a very good voice cast. Sure. And they give good performances. I think that the writing is not spectacular. I think it's fine, but I think that they give good performances, and so I really do feel, especially given this being a Western team, especially given a lot of Call of Duty, Halo, other big Western game franchises, their talent coming to retro, I don't think it's that they're not capable. And I just don't like that as I'm playing a game like Prime, where I'm trying to really stay involved with the world, staying close to it, I'm taken out and wondering, okay, what about the way the game was made brought us to this point? Sure. Because I think it's unsuccessful. Yeah. And just to put a bow on that point for me, I think Prime 3 did a much better job of this, where you had these really nice cutscenes that emphasized action, and then you had... when you did have moments where you're talking to human characters, either it's like an ensemble shot as a bunch of people are being given instructions and Samus is just there, or you're and our friend Brendan put this really nicely to me in a conversation we're having, an almost Half-Life style approach to cutscenes where you go up to a character in first person, they talk to you, and there's no expectation that the camera is going to turn around and look at Samus. The expectation is you are still embodying her at that moment.
You're right. It's literally the fact that there is the reverse shot for you to spend a couple seconds realizing that she's not saying anything. If the conversation just continued, you'd never be like, oh, she's not responding. It's like, oh, she's a silent protagonist. But they show you that she's standing there going...
Yeah. And that's why it just becomes a pretty high impact issue for me.
Sure. And the thing I will say about that is the problem that I think most people will take from this is that the side characters are either bad or feel out of place or X, Y, and Z. Those characters, I think, are one of the big sticking points for the community and the conversation about this game right now. The reason why I will say that I don't think that they are the problem is because I think that the narrative and the structure of the game is so that they are baked so core into that of the way that the levels are paced and the way that the narrative is furthered, that Samus is the one that feels out of place to me. I have no strong feelings, positively or negatively, about any of the side characters in this game. Miles McKenzie is not as annoying as people expected that he would be. He's not particularly active in the game. Of course, one of the things that I will say is, yes, he talks over the radio too much. He repeats lines of dialogue a lot. That's not like a major sticking point for me either way. No. Sometimes it was useful. Sometimes it wasn't, like, hit or miss. The other characters, I think, are ultimately going to end up being a lot less memorable than Miles McKenzie. Their personalities aren't particularly strong. Nora is the only character that has, like, a different personality.
Yeah.
She's pretty annoying, but not, like, terribly so. Like, this group of side characters are, like, they're the platonic ideal of a squad of largely faceless soldiers. Is that, like, they've got their slightly different roles and their slightly different backstories, but we're not going to dive too deep into them. We're not going to, like, really explore what their dynamic is together. Nora and Duke are really the only two that have some sort of dynamic at all. Like, I'm surprised when I learned that they know Miles, because, like, I mean, you can assume, but, like, he hasn't said anything about them. Like, there's this really weird element that they have that is, like, they're not well fleshed out. They're not particularly interesting, but they are, I will say this, and I know a lot of people disagree, to me, they're largely non-intrusive to my experience with the game. They are totally fine. I like the idea of having Galactic Federation characters that aren't Samus, because those people exist out in the universe. It is fine to put them in the narrative. But the fact that Samus doesn't seem to like them, from my perspective, is a big part of why I find it hard for me to personally like them.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I actually did like them quite a bit. And I think this is a big, again, I think a theme of this is, despite I would say Metroid is one of my favorite game series, period.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not really like the other girls when it comes to a lot of Metroid stuff. I actually really like the cast characters in this game. Sure. Now, I think that some of them are very weak. I think that Tokabi is basically... he gives nothing. I think his performance is sort of, there's like this weird, like, idiosyncratic way to the way he delivers lines I don't think is particularly interesting. But I particularly like Miles for a lot of the reasons I already shared. But I like Duke and Armstrong similarly, because I think that having them to play off of each other works well. Yeah, and sure. I think that Armstrong's sort of fandom for Samus is actually a moment where Samus's silence kind of works. Because
sure, I can see that, yeah.
There's a fun give and take there where it's all give and no take. And I kind of like that. And it actually does endear me to Armstrong in a way. Because I'm like, well, actually, this person really cares about Samus, and they're in this really fucked up situation here on Vuros. I want to take care of them. And I had this interesting moment, which I think says more about me and what I bring into this game than what the game is doing. But at the end of Flare Pool, when the cannon is falling apart, the whole place is going to blow, and you get Duke and Armstrong out in this escape pod. And then Samus has to escape on her own. I immediately was like, oh, I want to go to Fury Green and make sure they got there.
Sure.
Because I don't want, like, what if they're stranded somewhere? I want to know. And I think that the game just really endeared me to them, just because I think just as a player, I felt more protective over them.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure they made it to the base camp.
Yeah, what I will say about those two is Flare Pool is one of the areas of this game that I have the least issue with. Number one, when we get to the bosses, I will say that one has one of the best bosses in the game, one of the only interesting bosses in my personal opinion. But because it's structured in the way that you think the game is going to be structured when you start it, is that it is this, like, forward-moving kind of set-piece thing. You have the escape sequence. You're following along with this group of characters. You're fighting together. It has this active narrative going on with the other characters that the other sequences don't really have. I think that especially Volt Forge and what's the ice one again?
Ice Belt.
Ice Belt. They had this interesting disconnect where there is a character. No, in Volt Forge you don't have anyone with you. But in Ice Belt you have Dakabi, and he'll come on the comms every once in a while being like, "Hey, something's happening. Keep up the good work." And I'm like, okay, they like do this narrative thing where like his leg is hurt, so he can't come with you. But like it's this interesting disconnect where they're trying to have this like moving forward, like them Samus getting to know this character and building this dynamic a little bit, but because he's so backgrounded, I like forget that he's there, and then I show up at the end. He's like, "Good work, you turned on the generator. Let's get out of here." I'm like, "Who the fuck are you?"
Yeah, he just sort of sucks. He's just sort of boring.
Yeah,
But I think the thing about that is that I think the character, quote unquote, is the Lemorne researchers that you're following via the logs, and I think this sort of speaks to one of my biggest theses about this game.
How many are you planning on writing, by the way?
Probably several. I think that
I've got like 94 more that I'm working on.
Well, I think that it's a good reference. I think that the way that the comparison to Zelda has been invoked is not right.
Okay.
Because to me, I think that looking at the desert at Soul Valley and saying, "Oh, it's like Ocarina of Time, Hyrule Field," it's not really useful. I think that the much more useful comparison between this game and Zelda, Ocarina of Time style Zelda, is in the way that the game is built up of these like discrete episodes that all have their own.
Yeah, this is the one where you go meet not the Zora but the Nora. Whoa.
Each of the areas has sort of its own discrete internal arc. I think its own priority, whereas the Ice Belt is more about the story of the Lemorne and the lore of their species. Flare Pool is more about this active action with these other characters. All of these have a different priority, and they all feel very singular. And then they add to this larger story of getting the teleporter keys, filling up the memory fruit, but they each sort of exist by themselves. Yeah, usually you play a Metroid Prime game, and every new area you unlock kind of complicates the central puzzle of untangling this big puzzle box world. Like you open up Phendrana Drifts in Prime 1, and there's nothing that's internally satisfactory or complete about that one area. Sure. you're gonna get some new power-ups, whatever, but really it exists in conversation with the areas around it, and the whole game is about figuring out Talon 4. This is also true of the later games, but to lesser extents and in different ways I'm not going to get us bogged down in. But this game is very different insofar as you go to each area, and like you're going to Dragon Roost Island Wind Waker, or like you're going to see, as you're saying, Jabu Jabu and Ocarina of Time, you're here to arrive in a local place that has its own characters, its own priorities, a beginning and an end, and some change. And I think that, to me, that is how this game is Zelda. It's not just that it has this big field type area to go through. I think that's very surface level. And I don't even really agree with the idea that the way that these areas unfold is like a Zelda dungeon. I don't think that's actually that true. I think it really is in the way that each place is an episode.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say. I think you're right. That is how the game is structured, and that is primarily, I think, how this game is different from other Metroid games broadly. And I will say that even though that is not my biggest issue with this game, I am fine with chapters in a game. I am fine with a world not being interconnected. I'm fine with linearity. These are things that are not issues for me in other games.
Yeah.
I think it's the most misguided element of this game, as the game is in conversation with what broadly the appeal and what I see as the intent of the Metroid series is as a whole, is this idea of something being this well fleshed out place that is very explorable, that the revisitation and the backtracking and the finding a secret entrance into something that connects the areas in a way you didn't expect to be, and gives you a sense that these things are all within one place, and that gives you that moment of surprise and delight. I think that while on concept level, I don't have an issue with this being more linear, more action focused, more episodic, it drops so much of what the appeal is of a Metroid world that I find it to be misguided, not only for me, because I think there's a litany of design decisions that then make this game less engaging to me than I would if it was designed in a more traditionally interconnected Metroid way, but I think it's something that I would not be surprised to see as the major criticism that a lot of Metroid fans have, because again, I think that is why Metroid is different from other games, is because it has this sense of place and interconnectivity that synergize. The difference between a Metroid game and a Zelda game, in my opinion, is the interconnectivity. Is the fact that you have the hook shot in an area in a Zelda game, and that dungeon is going to, like 95% of the times you're going to use that item is going to be within that dungeon. That's what it's designed around. It's about this thing. Sometimes you'll be able to get an extra set of bombs or whatever in a Zelda game that's on a different path or in the Hyrule field, whatever. But the focus is going to be of that item is that within that area. Whereas in a Metroid game, the idea to me that makes it different is that an upgrade, an item, is going to then be useful across the breadth of the game. It's going to be something that you're constantly revisiting, rethinking of areas with. And because these areas are so episodic in their narrative and physically very far apart, none of them connect whatsoever, that I think largely is why this game doesn't work for me structure-wise, and why I kept finding myself surprised when the game wanted me to go and revisit an area, to go get a Viola lava upgrade, or go find a mech part in Flare Pool, because the areas are so far apart, they're so separate, that I almost think like, oh, I'm done with that. I don't need to go back there. And so it creates this really frustrating disconnect, where the game feels so chunked up that I never feel like I'm exploring a world. I'm exploring these totally separate hubs that is, I personally think, kind of antithetical to what the unique appeal of Metroid is as compared to other adventure games.
I wouldn't describe Metroid that way personally. I don't actually think that that structure is definitely reflected in Prime 2 or 3, and I think it's only true by half in Prime 1.
Sure.
I think that the level design of Metroid Prime 1 looms so large over conversation around Metroid, period, that I think it presupposes two things. One, I think it presupposes that there isn't an aspect of this episodic design in Prime 1, which I think there very much is, with the number of power-ups and abilities that really only serve for their particular episode. I think the biggest example is the infrared visor in the Space Pirate Research Lab.
Yeah, sure.
It's useful in other ways, but not massively so. Mm-hmm. And you look at Prime 2 and Prime 3 in particular, they're not that far off from how this game operates.
Sure.
And I think that what's more defining of Metroid to me are things that are a little bit less quantifiable. I think it's a lot more about the way you interact with the world second to second than it is about how you interact with it on a broader scale, at least for me. It's a lot about the way that the world reveals itself to you, both in terms of its story and in terms of its items. It's a lot about close observation. And I just don't really think that requires backtracking. I don't think that requires interconnectivity. I think that where this game is not wholly successful for me, though, is that I think it should have just entirely felt comfortable just foregoing that connectivity at all.
Sure, and the backtracking. Yeah.
Now, because to me, the issue you're raising is really more an issue of feel, which is important. I think that the fact that Soul Valley has edges you can fall off of, the fact that there's only one individual entry to each area, those are the sorts of things that I think are detrimental to what I feel the Metroid experience is, which is being lost in this place, which is really believing it authentically. I think that's where it's weak. I don't think it's structural. I don't really, but I also just don't define Metroid as requiring that interconnectivity, just because I think that very few Metroid games actually embody that.
Well, to me, maybe interconnectivity is a word that I would use primarily from my experience coming from 2D Metroid, which is also how many people associate with the series. And whether or not that is entirely true of the Prime games, more so in the first one, I have no experience with 2 or 3, so I can't comment on either of those. But is that's the association with Metroid. Whether that's fair or not, is that there is finding secret paths and, you're ended up back in this area and then you can go and explore. But I think the feel is what you were mentioning is a big part of why this structure does not work for this game in particular. Is one, I have a lot of issues with Prime 1. It's a game I've never finished. It's a game I don't like very much, but I never felt there was this massive disconnect because you were largely naturally flowing from place to place. Is you would finish an
Yeah.
area and there would be a hallway and you would connect to the next area. And yeah, it would be largely insular and maybe you'd go back and get an item or whatever, but you would flow from one place to the other. A big part of why I think this game feels very stilted and half baked in its structure is because they want you to believe that this is a breathing ecosystem planet. But the actual structure of the game is incredibly video gamey. Is you've got the hub world, and then you get on the elevator and you go to the area that is nothing like the area you just left. The way that they like textually connect the areas is by a long loading screen of Samus getting into a vehicle ostensibly and riding to that place that is all the way on the other side of the planet. And that is very disappointing to me because I think the natural feel of flowing from one place to the other, of having them be next to each other, but having this in the world design reflect the fact that you're passing from biome to biome. I think that's one of the elements of Metroid that again makes it feel very distinct. Is like this to me feels more like New Super Mario Bros. U, where you're like you wander from the swamp world and then there's like a hard cutoff and it's the desert world and they're like touching each other but there's no like progression from one to the other. And so it doesn't feel naturalized to me. It feels very stilted and separate, and that's a very big disappointment for something where I do feel like the game on many of its levels is trying to convince you that this is a believable place, but I don't think its structure reflects that at all.
It's interesting because I find it very convincing. I actually think in some ways it's more convincing than Prime 1. Because for as much as I like Prime 1, it's in my 5 favorite games ever. So the answer is I like it a lot. The idea that I'm going to open one door and I'm going to arrive in a snowy tundra from a completely like unrelated biome belies belief. It just doesn't make sense. I think we've just accepted that this is a world where on this other side of a pressurized door, you're in a completely different place.
Yeah.
I think that the game that does this best is Metroid Prime 2, but I also think it has the least memorable world because everything feels so contiguous.
Sure.
It all really feels like it belongs in this place together. And I think that leads to a weakness of that game, actually. I think that for me, the reason that I like these environments so much is because they resist the static and almost archaeological quality that I think the other games have. I think you can play Prime 1 and sort of imagine it as though it's a museum. I don't think that's necessarily the same here, because I feel like there's a better sense that the world state in these different places changes. I'm thinking of flicking on the power in Ice Belt. I'm thinking of destroying the structures in Flare Pool. I'm thinking of the way that Volt Forge serves a specific and still active in-universe function that Samus is navigating. I think that you look at Prime 1, and that's not the strength of that game. The strength of that game, I actually think, is more video gamey. I think it is in the way that is a very novel and dense and beautifully assembled video game environment. I don't think that it has the same sense to me that that things are happening. I think that Soul Valley is a weakness, but I think that the actual environments to me feel like they more specifically live up to the idea of Prime as a real world with environmental storytelling than any of the games before it have.
Yeah, no, you know what? I think I can meet you halfway. I think Soul Valley's the problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm fine with there being an area that's in a volcano and an area that's in the frozen area, and they're the chapters that are next to each other. I've done that in plenty of games before. That's not an issue. But the fact that I have to go back to a place and then go to the next one, the flow is not there. If I finished the ice chapter and we'd turned on the generator and we'd broken the ice and I was able to finally like break the ice off of this tram that is the only way you can get into the volcano, then there would be this progression where I'm like, oh, I did this, now I can go there. But as it stands, because we have this giant circle of sand in the center of the game, not only do I feel like I'm not going from area to area, I'm going from area to Soul Valley, back to Miles for a little bit, to Soul Valley, and then to the other area. There's this, like, reset every time that I revisit Soul Valley, and I think it's a good time to talk about that section of the game, because it's another one of those things where it's like, I can see the idea here. I can see where I think I actually strongly disagree. I think this is with the comparison to Ocarina of Time, I think is a very apt comparison in open field connecting to disparate areas, Goron Mountain, Zora's Domain, whatever. Like, you go down the hallway and then you're in Zora's Domain.
Yeah.
That structurally, and then also within Soul Valley, it feels like it's trying to be this like kind of Breath of the Wild thing with the shrines, and I'm like, why? Why are these here? Like, it feels like it's trying to do things that other games do, as opposed to the strength and what I perceive as the naturalism, that flow between areas of of what I think makes Metroid distinct from something like Zelda.
So this is where I get, again, my different buy into this game than yours comes in, because my issue with Soul Valley is twofold. One, get the enemies out of Soul Valley. Get the enemies out of Soul Valley. They're bad.
Yeah.
The vile combat, bad.
There's like what? There's like 3 kinds of them.
There's 3
They
kinds.
all take 2-3 hits to beat.
Yeah.
It's all automatic combat.
Get them out of there.
And they don't do enough damage to feel like you're like, oh shit. It's
They're
not like
just
you're stumbling upon a fucking Lionel or a Guardian, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's an event. All right, I'm gonna focus on that now. These are like, you're buzzing away a mosquito.
They're just boring. Just get them out of there.
Yeah,
That's number 1. Number 2, make it 35% smaller.
sure.
Those 2 things are my 2 issues with Soul Valley. I actually like being in that space. Because for me, again, this sort of goes back to the point I was making about how I felt like the presence of the Lemorne was a little bit more foregrounded, and I was a little bit more interested to actually invest myself in that story. For as much as I love Prime 1, I've actually not really read up on the Chozo that much. I've never felt motivated to. Mm-hmm. I think what works for me about this is this idea that the Lemorne are a dead species, and what we have are sort of these like autonomous remains of their attempt to have some sort of future for themselves. And to have the heart of a planet with that narrative be this empty place, I actually find for me to be quite arresting, because one of the main ways I connect to these games is audiovisually, specifically through the music. And I actually find the fact that this game has this central absence, where you're here in this place where it doesn't have the density, it doesn't have the intrigue, it doesn't have the things that the other areas have. And it doesn't have a music track that is full of life. I think one of the cool things about a lot of music in this game is it feels so energetic. I'm thinking about either it's sort of the choral performances in Fury Green, it's the electric guitars, it's the vibe of a place like Volt Forge. There's a lot of energy to it, and then you arrive in Soul Valley and it's not there. I understand completely that this is a point that exists largely outside of design, but I also think that these games thrive in subjectivity. I think that the subjectivity of the relationship from Samus to the world to the player is why these games work for me so well, and why I think that they very specifically are interested in a lot of the ways I'm interested in talking about games, which is how they connect to us personally and what we get out of them. And I think I get a lot out of the absence that defines Soul Valley, and I think I get a lot out of also this idea that in this absence there are these little moments or these little shrines that are left behind by the Lemorne, and that's all there is. I actually think that, to me, and I completely understand how counterintuitive this is going to be, if the desert had so much more, I think that would undercut what I feel is the strength of the emptiness at the heart of it.
Yeah, so there's a few things. I think it's actually important to tie this into why I don't think the Lemorne narrative was as enrapturing for me. I think it is the strongest narrative element of the game. It's actually what the game like revisits the most. Yeah. In that, obviously, these are these areas. It is their structures. It is their culture. Their what's the word for like the prophecy that they're going to have a chosen one that's going to save their race. That is the narrative thrust of this game. But in some weird way, to me, I feel that's actually very disconnected from Samus's narrative and the narrative of the Galactic Federation, who are all here by complete happenstance. And the only reason that Samus is going through to do these things is to leave. And so And also because of what we mentioned in the beginning, Samus being silent, I feel like she doesn't care about this species because she has no reaction to anything they say. They are just like, well, we have these keys, these MacGuffins. You got to go get them for you to go home. And just by coincidence, it's also tied together with, because that's how the game is structured, you will have to collect the green energy to get the fruit to plant the seed. It feels very surface level. It feels not intertwined at all. I don't believe that Samus wants to go to the ice area, ice belt, to learn about these people. I believe she's going there to get the fucking key to go home, to go to the bottom of it, to go home. And her disconnect from that really doesn't sell me on the emotional connection between me as the protagonist, as Samus, and saving a long lost and very advanced alien race. I think that idea is very cool. But the reason why this is different from the Chozo is because Samus has a connection to the Chozo. And so when she's learning about them, I believe that she is interested in doing whatever it is, saving that history. It's her history in some way. There's a connection there. But she has no fucking idea who the Lemorn are. She's here on accident and she just wants to go home. And so the game has this really awkward disconnect between, I'm reading these things, but I don't feel that the narrative of the thrust of why the character is there and the reason why I'm progressing is not to save the people, to get the key. I feel I feel like the game is not designed in a way that invites me to care about the world it's being presented.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a difference of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, because I think that the intrinsic motivation I'm a little bit more charitable on, because ultimately what the Lemorn need is they've thrown this Hail Mary pass because their attempts to find a chosen one have failed. They send out the 12 people, none of them returned.
Yeah.
This last Lemorn priest is just like, look, if you find this, you are our chosen one. And I think that the fact that that you're never at cross purposes. The goal that Samus has to leave is the same goal that the Lemorn need. They need somebody to take their history and plant it somewhere else. It's, you play a game like Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and there are these legacies of a species like on the planet Brio. But Samus is there for a completely unrelated reason, and there is no intersection. It's entirely extrinsically motivated by you as the player if you want to figure out what happened to them. I think the fact that they need the same thing Samus needs just for different reasons, again, is the change that foregrounded that more in my mind. And then, again, another part of it for me is just simply that I am interested as the player to learn this stuff. And I think that because these things exist in parallel, they have the same, even if the emotional or logistical reason for getting off the planet is different, they both need to get off the planet. That aligns me with them more.
Yeah. I there's not much I can say about that. I think that to me, it feels like happenstance is that they are aligned, but not for any real reason. Though the game, and I think, again, the game, I think, feels at odds with itself here, is that I say that, and I feel that it's true for the narrative, but also this entire fucking world is designed for Samus Aran to be there with a morph ball and missiles and chips that she can put into her fucking arm cannon. And so that is another area where the world does not feel alien to me, because it actually feels like it's there for Samus. And so it's like this really awkward push and pull where I'm like, I don't think Samus wants to be here. I don't think she should be here, but she happens to be here. And the world is made for her to be there. It's like, which way is it, Western man?
I mean, she literally doesn't want to be there. Like, that literally is the thrust. Yeah. She has to leave. And like, I also, like, I get your point about the morphball stuff. I think that it is goofy to an extent, but I also think I never put on a video game and forget that I'm playing a video game. I think that there is an extent to which the character's power-ups are what's going to influence the way that the world is made.
Yeah.
I guess I just don't really take issue with the fact that this place is possible for Samus to move through, because it has to be.
Well, no, of course. I think it's a good time to talk about the progression of this game, the power-ups, the abilities that you gain.
Yeah.
Because I think that, for me, actually almost everything we've talked about up to this point is Retro taking pretty big swings, all things considered, in the narrative, in the structure, in the tone of the world being very different from the previous games, and from what I was saying, a lot of these things being, to me, kind of counterintuitive to what I think the appeal of Metroid is. But the thing that it retains, and
Can I actually just very briefly, just because I actually think on that point, this is why I'm so excited to have the conversation with you, because I don't think any of this is revolutionary. And I think that's what puts this game in a very interesting context. Because I actually think that, and I just literally replayed Metroid Prime 3 a couple weeks ago. This is the same thing. It's the same thing. And I think that part of what has made this game as like a cultural object so interesting to me is that it sort of has presupposed that Prime 4 is further from what Prime is as a whole than it actually is.
Yes. And I think there's one very key reason for that.
Yeah.
It's because no one's played Prime 2 or 3.
Exactly. And so I just feel like
I haven't played them. I'm not sure if I will play them. I don't know if I would like them or not. But Nintendo knows.
Yeah.
That what people think of when they think of Metroid is either 2D or Prime 1.
Yes.
And then they have these two other games that are not only significantly lower sellers, actually I'm not sure if that's exactly true.
Not significantly, but their footprint is been wiped away.
Yeah. And then they do a game that is a sequel to these games that they have not made accessible again. They haven't set the groundwork for the expectation that this is what Prime is now, quote unquote. But also, I think, again, to that fact, it plays in this really awkward kind of push and pull middle ground where I'm like, which kind of person are you trying to appeal to? Are you trying to appeal to Prime 2 or 3 fans, which are not the most popular games in this series and not the ones that are the most accessible? That's a fleetingly vanishing group of people. And what Metroid is to most people is Prime 1, is the 2D games, and this game is totally antithetical to that. And that's my experience, is I could go play Prime 2 or 3. Again, I don't have a particularly large amount of investments too, but the reason why having a bunch of characters feels revolutionary is because a lot of people don't realize or don't know or aren't particularly interested in what happened in Prime 2 or 3.
yeah, and it's not that I think that people should be, and it's not that I think that this game is like totally just reheating what Prime 3 did, because there's an evolution to it. I just mostly caveat that because I think that there's for understanding my connection to the game, I think it's important to understand the continuity between these games.
100%.
And Prime 3 being my second favorite in the series, the closeness that it and 4 are is important. And I think that if you had to like reduce my interest in this game down to a list of bullet points, that's one of the ones that'd be most critical for understanding it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I think that's very important context to give. The point that I was making is that the conversation around this game, the perception of a lot of the elements of this game, is that a number of things that we've talked about to this point, narrative focus, cutscenes, lots of characters, the structure with Soul Valley, the comparative disconnect of these areas, are things that I think most people will feel are radically different from what they expect or want Metroid to be, and are, at least what are, again, perceived as the things that this game is bringing to the series, how it feels like a step. I'm not going to say forward, I'm not going to say backward, I'm just going to say it's a step.
Sure.
But the way that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond feels the least like a step forward is these godforsaken fucking abilities that are... Abram, I'm going to send you an image real quick.
Okay.
I did a little research last night because I was thinking about this as I was playing through the game. An image is coming to your Discord DMs.
Yeah.
Of the list of upgrades from Prime 1 and the list of upgrades for Prime 4 are almost one-to-one.
Yeah.
And the ones that are new are the psychic stuff that is barely a fucking twist on the kinds of upgrades that you've experienced before, not only in Prime 1, but other Metroid games.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is one of the biggest letdowns of this game, is the upgrades and the power-ups feeling so fucking rote. I am not excited to get the Ice Beam. I am not excited to get the double jump. I'm mildly curious to get a psychic version of blank until I use it and I'm like, this is the exact goddamn same!
Yeah.
I am so blown away by the fact that this game's power-up list has one of its own new ideas, and it's a psychic lasso, and that's basically the fucking grapple. Those are I'm surprised actually they aren't the exact same upgrade.
Sorry,
it's so fascinating.
Balls and strikes again. The lasso's not new. It's the same lasso from Prime 3.
No, I know. I'm sorry. I'm comparing to Prime 1.
So right, but I'm just complicating it further to say that the only thing that is truly new in this game is the control beam.
Yeah, which they took from Skyward Sword.
but yes, even the lasso, its utility in combat, its utility in exploration is the same as the grapple lasso in Prime 3.
Great. All right, then I'll strike that from the record. And frankly, great context. Again, my comparison here was to Prime 1. That paints this game in a less inspiring, less creative, less distinct, less unique, less forward-looking light than I really was hoping for it to be, given that it's a game with, compared to Prime 1, 25 years of different design language, and even compared to Prime 3, almost 20 years of design language. Yeah. The fact that it is so similar from a team that I think should have been more creative, should have been more looking to do something new, is a massive, massive disappointment to me.
Yeah, I mean, so this is actually one where I'm not totally out of alignment with you either. I think that this is also a weakness of Prime 2 and Prime 3. I think Prime 3 makes a little bit of a stronger effort. Well, they both do, but I don't think that any of the three games after Prime 1 are able to really thoroughly recontextualize the type of activities you're doing in the world. There are some power-ups that are a little bit more revelatory in Prime 2 and 3 that they omitted, I think partially because they're awkward. The biggest example of this is the screw attack, which is not in these games.
Yeah, sure.
But is in Prime 2 and Prime 3 and is kind of annoying to use. Like there is stuff that they did that is very hit or miss in those games. And so I look at what they did and they said, look, the suites of abilities that Samus had in Prime 2 and Prime 3, where they're quite gimmicky, where they're quite flawed.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, putting this game in conversation with those other games, I think they did some things to Samus's arsenal that make it, I think, better than any of the previous ones.
Sure.
Some of it involves getting rid of shit from Prime 1 that I don't think was particularly good outside of a novelty. Specifically visors. I think that the visors are a fun novelty in all of the games, but they are not... I think that they feel like more of a gimmick than anything else, a situational gimmick. I think getting rid of those is a great step. Excuse me. I think having the different elemental beams tied to a single ammo type is a great step over Prime 2.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that they did to say, hey, let's actually take some of the lessons. Let's take these discrete shot types from Prime 2. Let's take this lasso from Prime 3. Let's synthesize that in with the building blocks of Prime 1, and let's build something that I think takes the lessons from all of these arsenals and makes one that is, in my opinion, the best.
Sure.
Best is not evolutionary. And I wanted something a little bit more evolutionary because I think that the control beam opens up a type of puzzle and a type of combat opportunity that is actually new. And I was hoping that we would get more of that, and we didn't. So
no.
Not
only did we get more of that in terms of number of upgrades, that thing's not used that much in the game.
No, it's used no more or less than you'd use a particular Zelda item.
Yeah.
And I for me again, because
like a beetle of some sort.
Yes, very much like maybe one you can launch from your wrist even.
Wow.
And again, my perspective coming into this game is somebody that plays Prime a lot, regularly plays these games, and I look at this roster of power-ups and weapons and say, okay, it's not the new approach that I wanted it to be, but it's the best that we've ever had. And I just think that for me, that's going to count for a lot more than it's going to count for someone like you who will probably never play this game again versus me who's already playing it for the second time right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I think it makes sense where it is a trimming of the fat. It is a polishing up of what has been there before. But it is one of those things where it feels very safe to me. Where it's like, ooh, we don't want to do anything too crazy. We know it works. Let's kind of work within that. Let's do a little twist on them. But frankly, a lot of the psychic stuff is mechanically feels very similar to what you've done before, and it's and also usually when it's a slight twist, I think it's a little bit worse. Like I really don't like having to place those psychic bombs and like make them float and like grabbing them and sending them somewhere. I'm like, that's just like 2 steps too many. Why can't I just generate a bomb in my hand and like send it somewhere? Like it feels a little bit like the new stuff is that extra step clumsy. And also doesn't feel like it's particularly integrated. The psychic visor is the other thing. So there's 2 things I will say are actually new. Is Viola, obviously. It counts as an upgrade. I will count it. And the psychic visor and psychic glove, which are technically different upgrades, but no, they're fucking not. It's basically the same thing. It's like you can interact with psychic stuff now. And Viola, I'm fine with. I think Viola, if Viola was used in more interesting ways, Abram, how is there not like a true escape sequence on Viola in this game? Like that writes it fucking self. How is that not the last chapter of this fucking game? Yeah, okay, yeah, you're ripping on Halo at that point. Those are cool parts of fucking Halo. You have a bike, use it for something other than, frankly, Soul Valley is just holding forward. You don't have to really do anything, as we mentioned with the combat and all that stuff. It's not like obstacles, whatever. Viola is like, it's fine, but I think it's underutilized. The psychic stuff, specifically Psychic Visor, it's another element where I'm like, I think this is worse. I think this is a downgrade from what we've done before. Because what it ostensibly boils almost every puzzle in this game down to is turning on your visor, holding down the left trigger, and doing something very fucking slowly. Like, everything psychic in this game is like, yeah. And I'm like, and it's also usually not even a puzzle. It's like holding the stick in a direction. Whether that's to do this, or to do this, or to do this. It's not clever. It just slows the pace of this game. And I really do think that, like, on a macro scale, if I'm to, like, try to pin and needle all of these different elements that I think make the game worse together, a lot of it just make this game very, very slow. It's these long loading animations to go to the different areas instead of opening a door and you're there. It's the vast expanse of Soul Valley that doesn't have a lot going on that lead to upwards of 2 or 3 minutes of you doing very, very little to get to what you actually want to do. And with the Psychic Visor, which is one of the major things, it just makes the puzzles slow. Not interesting, not clever, slow to interact with. You know the answer from step 1. You just have to wait for the fucking animation to finish. And it's a really, really, really weird thing to integrate into this game.
Let me make a contention here, Tucker.
Yeah.
This is the heart of our difference in this game.
Sure.
Because I love how slow it is.
Yeah.
That's actually the best thing about this game to me. Which I know is going to sound fucking crazy. But I really love deliberation. And this is something that I've come to learn about myself in the way I play games, as of late. I really appreciate the pace. What it reminds me a lot of is a game like Chibi Robo, where every action is a multi-step action. Mm-hmm. And I understand that that's not compatible with a fast-paced game. Mm-hmm. I think that to enjoy this game, you have to be able to accept the pace at which it moves. And I completely understand that that's just not going to be the pace that a lot of people want to move at. Yeah. But I really like tracing a pattern of a psychic pattern to open a door, to move something, to manipulate an object. Again, invoking Brendan a lot, but because I've basically been messaging him nonstop about fucking minute details of this game for 5 days. He described it as ImSim light, not in the mechanics of how an immersive sim is going to give you a puzzle and there's an infinitesimal number of solutions to the puzzle, but in the way that it makes you feel embodied. And to me, feeling embodied is most key to enjoying this game. And so I understand that flicking the Psychic Visor, having Samus put her fingers up to the side of her head, watch the 2 opposing scan wheels complete, popping up the text, or allowing you to manipulate the object, is slow. But I need that slowness, because what I need to do is just be in this world and luxuriate in the opportunity to listen to it and to feel not like Samus is touring through it, but manipulating it. It's not about puzzle solving. It's about manipulation. It's about feeling like the world is not just there as set dressing. But it's there as something that responds to me, that I respond to. It's why it's meaningfully different but similar. The reason I like Vault Forge so much is that there's context. There is a assembly line of lasers that are like heating these pieces. To get through the lasers, you dodge around the pieces. You have to pretend to be a part in the assembly line to be picked up and move somewhere else.
Sure.
It's a game that, to me, understands that at the heart of Prime is slowness. At the heart of Prime is deliberate movement and action. It is switching visors. It's switching beam types. It's a analog feeling. It's about feeling every action. And to me, that's why these games are so good. And that's why I think this elevates that. It's what Prime 3 did as well. A very maligned part of Prime 3 is that there's a lot of motion control gimmicks of like using Samus's hand to literally enter a code cipher or to pull things out of the walls, put things back in. But to me, that context and that closeness is what's so good about these games. And to me, this extends what Prime 3 did.
Here's what I'll say. I think that is an excellent reading of the vibe of this game. But I think a lot of the things that I'm commenting on, in the experience of someone like you that craves that slowness, craves that deliberation, would not be... I struggle to believe that the vibe of the game would truly be hampered if the scanning speed was 50% faster.
Yeah.
Because you say it's deliberate. It just takes a while. You're not doing anything. You're just waiting for it to happen. Same thing with Soul Valley. One of your comments on it, and we agree on this, is that it should be smaller. Soul Valley is empty. That is a critique that a lot of people have. It's one that I certainly share as well. It's about how long it takes to get from place to place. Not that you have to get from place to place. And same with the psychic puzzles as well. Yeah. If instead of going, you went, the action's the same.
Yeah.
The interaction is the same. It's very simple, whether or not it's slow or fast. But the fact that it is slow, it's not that I don't like a slow game. It's not that I don't like to drink in a world. It's that the things that are slow about this game are non-interactive. It is how simple Soul Valley is. It's not particularly interesting to drive around it. It's how simple the puzzles are. It's obviously a loading scene, but like how long the loading is between the areas. Whereas a lot of the appeal of so many games nowadays are either instant loading times or interconnected worlds. If the world wasn't as big, if the animations weren't as slow, if the scanning wasn't as slow, the vibe would still get across, but it would be non-interactivity or slow interactivity for a second instead of 2 or 3 or 4 or minutes upon a time. And the reason why that's so key to me is that so much of what this game wants you to do and needs you to do to finish it is not particularly interesting. It is just padded with time between the times when you're actually able to interact with the game. And that means that I'm not I'm disincentivized by the pace of the game to engage with its mechanics on a deeper level.
Yeah.
I don't... And this is one where I'm like, this is a hard and fast, I think this is a bad part of this game. The exploration rewards of this game, I think, are mind-numbingly terrible. And it makes me question why they're even there. Because if I need to get the lasso, get the spider ball, whatever, and trek all the fuck away across Soul Valley, and go all the way through the loading animation to get into Vault Forge, go all the way to Tower 3, and then I'm going to use the spider ball and I'm going to get 10 missiles. That is a level of disconnect between the rewards for exploration, the time it takes to get that thing, and the rewards you actually get. It doesn't feel meaningful. It feels padded. It feels slow. I'm like, I will go get an extra health canister or an extra 10 energy blast if it's like, if I can see it there. But I'm not going all the way back over there for something that I do not need because it's going to take so long. And I'll go in a little bit more in depth with that, but with the power-ups. But that is one of the big disconnects from this game, is that it places these things that you can interact with. But the only way you can interact with it is if, frankly, you fucking wait to go and get it.
Yeah.
And usually, a long wait in a game is going to mean the reward is worth that time. You're like, okay, I can be patient. But the patience is not a virtue in this game. You are not rewarded for your patience. You're given like a fucking gold star sticker and expected to be like,
Yeah.
oh boy, you gave me a fucking sticker.
I just like getting missiles. I just think this is a personal difference between us, because to me the reward, and I'm playing it on hard mode. I'm like, yeah, okay, I think I need the missiles now, but I didn't need them on normal. I fucking died one time on playing the game.
How many times did I die? Maybe twice.
Well, actually, one of my stupid teammates died against Silex at the end of the game, so that counted as a death as well. But I only died one time. But I just... Because what you're making me wonder is like, okay, well then why am I willing to go back across that place to get that missile upgrade? Because you're right. You don't need 5 more missiles. You don't. I'm not even going to try to caveat that unless you're playing on fucking hard, and well, I'm not going to caveat it. But I think doing is more important for me in this game than getting. And again, like I said at the top, it's not my goal to paint this to be as some unimpeachable game. It's not that I think that the complaints you're making aren't right from coming from the perspective you have. I just think that that's not my perspective, and I enjoy doing. I enjoy going back across the map to get to Fury Green purely because I love the music and I love the art direction and I want to be there. I think that the reason in my part that in my mind that all the Prime games are as niche as they are, and the reason that Prime 1 didn't sort of get the flowers that I think a lot of people thought it would get when it got remastered is because I don't think it's a game about the reward. I think it's a game about the feeling of doing. And I think that if you don't want to do it because the game doesn't ask you, or it doesn't say, okay, you need to go get that missile upgrade. You need that energy tank. If you don't want to do that, I don't think that that's your fault. I think that that's just the game is not interested in. It says, okay, either you want to do it because you enjoy it, or you don't, and you don't need it. And there's a way that you can play these games for minimum %, and you can say, well, hey, look, I'm not going fucking anywhere other than where Miles tells me he needs to go for the critical upgrade, and you can play that way. But it's hard for me to take intrinsic issue with this because I just think that the reward is not the point.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say, and I think this I can parallel this quite well with the slowness thing that we were just talking about, is that everything that you said, I don't think reflects the actual issue that I have.
Yeah.
Is simply that the rewards aren't meaningful. Not that you don't need them, but they're not only not helpful, but they're not interesting. This game lacks, to me, and I'm gonna parallel this with another one of my major critiques of the game, or tie this in. It lacks surprise. It lacks that surprise and delight factor that so many Nintendo games, especially in the last 7-8 years, have really done.
Yeah.
Is when you get a Wonder Flower, you have no idea what's going to happen. When you're interacting with the physics in Tears of the Kingdom, you're creating things that no one else has ever made before. It has this Nintendo's games, to me, are about that experimentation, about oh my god, I didn't know that was going to be in this game. I'm really glad that I went off the beaten path and found this interesting challenge and was able to engage with the world and use my knowledge of the mechanics and the world and my understanding of video games to engage with in this way. Or when you're in Odyssey and you get a couple of coins at the top, it's because what you did to get up there was inventive. It was creative. You were using your knowledge of the mechanics and its flexibility to get somewhere. And the reward, you're right. It's not necessarily about the reward. It is about the doing. And my problem is also that I think that the doing in this game is not particularly interesting, not only because it's a lot of slowness and a lot of minimal interactivity, which is not a problem for me in many games. I love my fucking walking sims. I love my visual novels. But so much of the interactivity in this game, and it, again, tying this into my problem with the power-ups, the mechanics from so much of the stuff that you're doing, I don't think are particularly interesting. And so if the reward's not the problem, then the doing is the problem.
Okay.
Yeah. And the lack of surprise, again, ties back to the fact that I've gotten so many of these upgrades before in other Metroid games. Okay, it's not doing anything particularly new, but even within what I'm getting, 50, 60+% of the upgrades you get boil down to press a D-pad button and press R. the interactivity of so many of the things that you unlock in this game are mechanically identical. And
Yeah.
it means that I'm not excited or interested or thinking about the possibility of, oh, now that I've got this, I'm going to be able to do this, because I know that almost every power up in this game is a lock and key thing. It's this enemy needs to be defeated by ice, so use the ice beam. This enemy needs to have a shield, so use the grapple to pull the shield off. I need to get up there. Well, or like everything in this game is a door with a certain kind of key that matches that door. It's the Resident Evil problem, quote unquote, where you get the clover key and it opens the clover door. You need the electric key to open the electric door. You need the grapple key to unlock the grapple door. And so if they're not unlocking anything interesting in terms of where you're going, and they're also not interesting to use because so many of them boil down to something came out of Samus's arm cannon, then I'm like, what's the fucking point? It feels repetitive. It feels cyclical. It feels padded. And it feels flat. Because I'm never surprised by getting... the progress in this game is like a flat fucking hill. I'm like, yeah, I want to be able to double jump. But also, there's like no platforming in this fucking game. The double jump is used when you get those fucking psychic platforms. Okay, fine. I have no issues with those. But like, using there's not really any interesting times you're using like the morph ball or the boost ball to like go up things. Like, they're required. Like, it's all just like, you can't do this until you do this, and then you can. And they don't mix together in any particular interesting way. There's no experimentation with it. It's like, you press the button and it does the thing that you weren't able to do before. And that's a very simplistic and I think uninspired way to approach specifically Metroidvania design, or the idea of getting power-ups, where so much of what I've enjoyed about specifically 2D Metro games as well is the fact that I can kind of combo the things together, and I can use the screw attack out of a double jump. That lets me get up here and use the morph ball and the blast bomb in like a clever way. Like, I never felt clever or rewarded with my ingenuity using almost any of the upgrades in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. It's not a game of emergence in any way. There's nothing emergent about the game. I just think that you can, at a certain point, reduce a lot of video games down to you. There's a problem that you solve with an item when you press the button, and then the item solves the problem.
100%.
I just, to me, I think it's just it's just not in my experience of playing, because again, I think that Metroid Prime for me exists a lot in these more either abstract ideas or longer tail ideas. So let me make both clear. I think the point you have about I get the thing to defeat this type of enemy faster to get to this place.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of it for me, because these are games that sort of live and change with me. And replaying Metroid Prime 1 for me is a performance. I'm performing this set of notes on the page faster and faster, with more and more elegance. And maybe I'm finding something new along the way. But it's not about feeling that ingenuity so much as it is about performing. And I think that's asking something different from you than you might be than a game like Odyssey or Wonder or Tears of the Kingdom is asking from you. Mm-hmm. It's a different type of interaction with the game. This is a game that's a lot more about orchestration. And I like playing my part in that, because I think, another area where I think we differ quite strongly on this game is sort of the connection we feel or the interest we have in the different environments of it.
Sure.
To me, doing these actions, if we're going to abstract it to that degree, is secondary to being in the world. Mm-hmm. And above all, that's what governs my interest in this game. Mm-hmm. And I think that the way that my actions are more directly in conversation with the world than in previous games makes the game successful to me. It's not that I'm going to debate the nuance of the application of any particular power-up in this game. It's not even that I don't think that it's been handled better in other games. I think that Prime 1 still, from what you're talking about, this very video gamey sensibility, it's the best video game of them. Sure. I think it's most adept at layered design in that way. The way that game is folded on itself very expertly. Mm-hmm. But then, to me, why this game for a while was so close to 1 and still might be so close to 1 for me is that I think it does the top layer better. I think the music
Sure.
is more inspired.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it takes a lot of the same level motifs and gives them a little bit more to what we were mentioning earlier, this more unique, more episodic, more individual sensibility. Sure. It gives them more of a beginning and an end. Magmoor Caverns is the same when you enter it as when you exit it. You can just see more of it in Prime 1.
Sure.
Here you inextricably change it. Like, to me, you're totally right that it's lock and keys. There's no doubt about that. I can't say anything about that. But but do you want to turn the key? I think the answer for me is I do want to turn the key.
Yeah, the thing that I will say is I agree that I was maybe being too simplistic of the press a button or use the item to do the thing. I think that it's the lack of variety between the things. Yeah, sure. In that a lot of the interactivity between all these are the different beam cannons that now the energy or the elemental versions all use the same resource, and so like there's not even that difference. I'm not saying it would have been better if they used the different resources.
Let me tell you, would have been worse.
I believe you. But also I think something I'm having a difficult time reconciling with this game. In one of its biggest strengths for me, where I will compliment it, and I'm about to, and also one of its things that I find as a weakness, is how strong the art direction of this game is, how amazing the lighting is, how they create this architecture, specifically in Chrono Tower, that I think is a phenomenal location. Yeah. That feels truly otherworldly. These towering purples and whites. It's like you know what it feels like to me? You remember like the shots from Nope when they were inside of Jean Jacket? Oh, it was like that, where it's like, this is bizarre. This is otherworldly. I've never been in a place or looked up at things that are vanishing into the sky, because this is such a massive construction, and the shapes are in ways that humans don't create. And so Chrono Tower specifically, I think, is one of the best locations there. It's not very interesting to be in mechanically, but the atmosphere is so dense and bizarre that I really, really loved that place. And I do think that, again, in terms of texture quality, in terms of environment density, the art direction of this game, I think, is quite excellent. But my problem is that ultimately, on a mechanical level and also on like an architectural level, the main areas that you visit are not really that different. I like Vault Forge, these fucking giant circular spiky towers in a storm. Like, gee, what the fuck? This is fucking crazy. That's not reflected by the experience of being inside Vault Forge, which is a factory. It's an alien factory. They've got holograms. Yeah. They're working with bikes that I couldn't ride on, that don't fit my physiognomy. But it's a factory. And Icebelt is a laboratory. You get this cool moment where you're going across the chasm and the wind is blowing and you have to be a little bit careful. Not very long, but there are these moments of place and spectacle that do feel truly alien. But the moment-to-moment interaction and architecture of these places that you're in are not really that different. You're shooting the beam to go through the door. You're going through a tube that's connecting a machine to another machine. I really think that I have a hard time believing Vuros as a place where this culture lived, because I feel like I'm just visiting like work environments the entire time. Yeah. It's like, where are their beds? Where were their like plazas that they gathered? Yeah. Was this a species that had recreation? Did they do sports? I don't really know. What I know is they worked. I know that they built things and that they did research and that they collected materials to make the things from the three major locations that you visit: Flare Pool, Icebelt, and Vault Forge. I like the ruins of Fury Green. I think that's neat. The mines, not ultimately really that different from Flare Pool, kinda. Like, it feels a continuation of that. I'm very disappointed by how samey the experience of going through specifically Vault Forge, Flame Pool, and Icebelt are, because they're just rooms in a industrial environment. And their lighting is different. This one's ice, this one's got frozen things on the sides, and this one's got lava dripping down, but that feels superficial to me. The differences between these areas feel largely superficial, in ways that I really think they shouldn't be, because they are interesting, bizarre alien environments that are well rendered, but the moment to moment experience of going through them is really not that different.
You know, I think that's a really great point. I really like your point about recreation, and that's very interesting. Because and I almost feel like this is a great counterpoint to what I was saying about, or it's not a counterpoint. It's more of a pitfall of what I was saying about the way that I enjoy the Lamorne storyline.
Sure.
Because the Lamorne storyline is really concerned with what that species created and what it learned. Because that's what Samus needs to take off the planet with her and plant elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that doesn't intersect with the life of the Lamorne otherwise.
Yeah.
So then that is a good point, because then what it does is it arranges the environments around their achievements and around the places they were, where it went down, where the important things happened. And I think that puts the Lamorne storyline more at the center of the experience. But to your point, it leaves us with a sort of less round understanding of them. Because you're right, there's some interesting bits of scanning that I like in Fury Green in particular, where you might see like, oh, this was a place of worship, but now it's buried. Yeah. Things like that. That stuff is really good. But you're right. You're totally right about that. That's a good point.
What I was thinking about when you were saying that is, I think that speaks to a really big reason why I find it hard to invest myself in the plight of the Lamorne and wanting to save them as a species, is because to me, culture, and ultimately what the goal of saving Lamorne is to preserve their culture. Culture is not, to me, necessarily in the technological innovations, but in the day-to-day life of the majority of the people that are living in a place of a people. What kind of foods did they eat? What kind of music did they listen to? These things that are not presented at all in this game, because the game is much more focused on the things that you are able to experience that they did succeed in doing, and they are impressive things. But it's like they built Vault Forge, which is a generator. it's a big fucking electrical generator. Okay, cool, but I don't know, generator's not insane. Or getting fucking magma energy from flare pool, or like the science labs are kind of cool, but like I don't know what they did that would be so impressive that they would really like shake things up, if their culture was preserved. And so I think that kind of flattening of them makes them feel kind of sterile to me. It's like, yeah, they can build amazing monuments. They can create robots. They can learn how to adapt to psychic abilities. But then my question is, how does the fact that this culture had psychic abilities, how did it impact their day-to-day lives? Like, what do you get out of that? Like, there are these questions that I feel like the story of the Lamorne really jumps over, that paints their culture and what I'm aiming to save as this very mechanical thing, rather than what they're presented as is like these elegant, intelligent creatures. But what I'm interacting with in Flare Pool, in Ice Belt, and in Vault Forge is very mechanical, and so I think there's just kind of a disconnect there.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the story, and were you reading all the little logs in Ice Belt about what was happening?
Quick side point to that exact point.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't, Abram, look me in the eyes and tell me one thing you know about me.
Yeah,
I love lore in video games.
You love a little lore.
I read the entire fucking Galactic Guide in Concord and took notes on it.
Yes.
I've read every note and listened to every fucking dialogue thing in BioShock and in Control and in all these games. The reason I didn't in this game is because scanning them took so long that by the time I was looking at a thing hanging from the ceiling, I was ready to move on to the next thing. I'm like, oh, this is a turbine that
No, I'm talking about the log entries in particular, where they're talking about trying to reverse the fate of the because, and again, you're not a worse Metroid Prime player because you didn't, but I just think that there's if you don't do that you're going to get even less out of the Lemorn.
Yeah, 100%. But again, to the barriers that this game sets up.
Of course.
It's so slow to do that. And frankly, a lot of what I did read didn't feel particularly compelling or like rich. That I by like a third of the way to the game, I'm like, I'm not fucking bothering with this. Like, I'm just gonna have to scan every fucking thing. It's gonna tell me something that's like, I don't know, maybe kind of interesting, but
I mean, there's a whole set of logs in Icebelt about one particular researcher who's in Icebelt, as they're in the waning days of trying to revert the Grievers back to Lemorn. And about how the power
I did know about that.
Yeah, about how the power is going out and they're doing everything they can, but the things they're trying aren't taking, and they're killing their brethren and they can't get them to transform back. Or they can, and then there's failures, or they're trying, or then the power goes out and they're like, look, we failed. Hopefully who comes here next can do something better. I think that I wouldn't agree that because I have the buy-in and the interest to skin all this stuff, that I didn't understand the Lemorn maybe a little bit more intimately than you did.
I'm sure you did. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where my perspective on this comes from, because I do think that there is more about them to understand. And I think that I'm also maybe more interested because a trope of Metroid Prime that this game does, of course, play into is that there is a doomed race to interface with. Mm-hmm. And so Icebelt, I know we disagree on, but the reason that to me that's one of my favorite areas in all of Metroid is that I think it unites, or at least makes what I think is the best case for the things that are most interesting about Metroid Prime working together.
Sure.
It has this through line narrative about this one particular, it's embodied in the perspective of one particular Lemorn researcher who is leaving logs about his last days before he died.
Sure.
It has two really...
Sounds like this guy might be the most developed character in the entire game.
It's got two very interesting and I think beautiful pieces of music that are then united around a particular environmental change. You flick the power on and the music changes. The environment starts to change. The ice starts to drip off the ceiling. The Grievers who ended up in stasis in low power mode in this facility jump out and start attacking Samus. Mm-hmm. It, to me, has what I was mentioning that I don't think a lot of Metroid Prime areas have. It has this discrete beginning and end, this singular story, and it responds specifically to Samus. Mm-hmm. And so because it has that, I look at the trade-off. I almost said 6-7. I look at the trade-off.
You would have gotten canceled.
I would have. Because I'm so already invested in figuring out what happened to Lemorn, because these environments all speak to the central Lemorn struggle, to the great tragedy, and how they attempted to resolve that. I like it. I like it a lot, actually. So that outweighs the lack of the recreational understanding of the people. Totally fair. But I think you make a good point that would have been interesting to learn.
Yeah. I think for me, it's a game that presents variety on a very surface level, but doesn't have that variety deep down. You get a lot of upgrades. They're largely the same. You visit these areas, to me, they feel largely the same. It's what I mentioned at the beginning. I think this game has some excellent qualities. I think it's visually very pleasing. I love the architecture. I love these worlds. I think the music is excellent. Yeah. But they are not supported by the depth and variety that I think the game presents itself as having. But I find that I start digging and I instantly hit, like, it feels very shallow to me.
I just don't think it gives you the tools that you need. I think it's a game that gives me the tools I need. And I think that I had this picture of a Metroid Prime 4 that was going to give you more tools than it gave you. Mm-hmm. And that's not your problem. I think that's Retro's problem. Sure. I am just surprised that the game... I'm surprised that the game is so in tune with what I wanted it to be, frankly. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think that that's the version that gets more people interested in Metroid. Mm-hmm. And, we've long gone back and forth about what's the use of that? Should this game do that? Should that game be for me? Should that game be for you? And I think the answer is it falls in the middle, and you have to take out of that as you will. And it's just it's a bummer to me that the game couldn't capture you in a way that made you, or that didn't inspire you to want to learn about that researcher and what happened in Icebelt. Yeah. Because I think that is that deeper layer that makes that area meaningful. 100%. But they couldn't get you to do that. And that's, to be clear, that's on them. That's not on you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of my, well, I don't know. I have so many frustrations with this game, um, that I feel like there's a lot of things that are not particularly complicated to change that would have made the experience a lot more engaging to me. Though I think that those are not the lion's share of the issues. I think that, structure and narrative and combat and upgrades and exploration, which are five of my major critiques
So
of this
everything.
game. And that's the honest God truth.
Yeah.
Is I am so thoroughly disappointed with this game that the areas I do praise, I feel like I'm like, well, yeah, we all know. The game looks great. The game runs great. The game sounds great. These are not issues that I have with the game at all. But a big part of why I was so interested to engage with it all the way to the end is because I was curious how the game would take steps forward as the game progressed. And I think one of the other biggest disappointments of this game is that the last act of the game is so disjointed, so padded, and so anticlimactic that it leaves you with a really weird taste in your mouth. Yeah. Ultimately, you don't get a cool, intricate Metroid Prime area to explore at the end of this game. The mines are a set path that Godspeed each one of your USGF soldiers, they're like, I'm taking one for the team, brother! And I'm like, I don't really fucking know you. Bye-bye. And so you go through this after, and okay, so let's talk about the whole final act. After you finish Flare Pool, because I think it's the last moment of, like, interesting, exciting, comparatively, Metroid Prime structure and gameplay. Then they're like, hey, those wreckages you've seen? Suddenly, we need that shit now. Go find 6 fucking mech parts in this empty-ass open world, and if you were not listening to the one moment at the beginning of the game where the Lamorne guide tells you to go collect green crystals, make sure you go collect almost every green crystal, because you need both of these things to finish the game. And Abram, here's the honest to God truth.
Yeah. When
I heard that the green crystals, you had to collect 100% of them, it's not actually all of them, but you fill up the bar, I almost stopped playing the game, and I was like in Ice Belt.
Yeah. Because
one of my biggest frustrations with games is when they gate off the final chapter behind inane horseshit. I didn't play the last level of fucking Super Princess Peach. I didn't play the last level of Marvel's Avengers. And these are two games that I don't like, that most people don't like. And one of the big reasons I didn't finish them is because I'm like, I don't want to have to fucking grind to get to the last boss of the game. And you don't make it super apparent before the last boss of the game. I knew this through cultural osmosis. I'm like, I need to get the green crystals. So the green crystals weren't a massive problem to me. But I did have to ride around the fucking boring-ass desert and smash these crystals for a while and get those fucking mech parts, which were not particularly interesting to go and get. It was just this big fucking fetch quest where I was going around this empty open world. It is a really poor last act. It also culminates in a not particularly great boss battle ending, which we'll talk about. But how do you feel about this? Green crystals, mech parts, and then the actual last boss scenario.
I don't have any issue with any of it. Because, again, this speaks to Metroid Prime as a performance, right? Because I didn't have a fetch quest at the end. I had...
You did! The 6 parts!
Yeah, but A, that didn't take very long, and B, that I don't even think I had done the mines when I started doing that. I didn't arrange my playthrough in a way that suddenly at the end I had all this stuff to do. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is good, but I'm saying that this is again where...
How's that possible? Wait. You got the mech parts before you went to the mines?
I think so. Some of them.
I don't think you can even... Oh, well, okay, so that's one of the weird things.
No, because I found
You're right.
Tokabi
the
early.
Tokabi thing is the delineating factor. Is you can stumble upon him if you're like, oh, there's a trail of smoke. I'll go over and do that. Though, to the point, to that being something that the game presents, that is not established that there's any dynamicism in the open world at all. So I was not thinking that was something that could happen. I'd heard that you could find him, but most people are probably not going to find him for the end before they're like, hey, make sure to go find Tokabi. He's got something for you. And so you found him early, and then you went and got some of the mech parts before?
Yeah, just as I'm going around the world.
Okay.
This is, again, it speaks to Metroid Prime's performance, because a big issue people have with Metroid Prime 1 in particular, well, actually, all 4 of the games have this sort of thing, where you have to do some kind of meta quest to unlock the final area. It's most
MetaQuest 2 is out now, actually.
What?
The MetaQuest.
Oh. The one in Metroid Prime 2 is by far the most egregious because you can't do any of it until the end. I believe. I've played 2 the least of the 3, but I believe that's true. Brendan, who's watching this, can correct me. A big issue people have with Metroid Prime Remastered, which I think is a completely valid issue, is that you need 12 artifacts. And these artifacts are fucking hidden in walls. They're hidden on top of shit. They're hidden under the water. Like, they're in weird places. On my first playthrough of Metroid Prime 1, that's the same issue I had with the game.
Yeah.
That was like a killer of the game for me, actually. But on each subsequent playthrough, in my performance of Metroid Prime, I'm getting that shit on the way. Same with Metroid Prime 3, you need these energy cells to unlock this decommissioned ship up in the sky. I'm getting all those energy cells as I'm going around the map. It's the same thing in Metroid Prime 4. The Takabi stuff is annoying because I wish that you could be picking up the mech parts from the very beginning.
Sure, absolutely.
But the green crystals you can be. And so I think the position I was in...
Yes and no.
Well, I'm just speaking from my experience. By the time I got to everything is done... Now you just need to do this stuff and we can go to Chrono Tower. I had to get one mech part, which you couldn't get until the very end because you needed a power bomb to break a thing in Flare Pool. So that had to be saved for the very end. And I had about a quarter of the tank of crystals left. But with the power bombs, it's much more trivial to get the last 25% than it is to get the first 75%. So what I'm saying here, and again, thesis for my whole discussion on this, I'm not saying that this is good design. I'm just saying that I'm a big Metroid Prime fan. I'm not having the same fetch quest problem that people are having. I'm not even saying it's a skill issue. A component of these games is like playing an instrument. It's memorization, and it's about recital and performance. And so the playthrough I'm working on now, I don't know how long it took me to beat the game the first time. I think 15 or 16 hours, even though the in-game clock said it was lower. My Switch said 15 hours or more when I beat the game. I'll probably beat it this time in 11. I don't know. I'll beat it in less.
I beat it in 9.
Yeah, but so just the point I'm making is that I don't have a comment on this so much as I just have my experience, and it's to say the way that these games live in my life, I'm not going to have an issue with this moving forward.
Yeah, I think obviously I had a very different experience.
Yeah,
and I think again I can keep wrapping these things in. I think so many of the things that I have an issue with, if they were improved on in ways that I can very clearly foresee how they would, they would not alter your experience at all.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
They may improve it. I don't know. They might hinder it. But to me, it's about communication.
Yeah.
It's that one of the major criticisms a lot of people have of this game is they don't realize how important the green crystals are. And the reason why I say that you can only kind of be collecting them throughout the course of the game is that for the vast majority of the game, the only things you can get are the crystals in the open world, which they don't give you fucking bupkis. They don't count for shit going to get those. You're going to be running around for 30 minutes and you're going to be like, that's how many I have when you look at the fucking thing. What does give you a bunch is when you can go into the shrines and blow up the dead and dense rocks of green crystals. And you can't do that until 75% of the way through the game.
Well, that's not entirely true. There's a couple that are electric gated that you can't do till later, but there's about half of them are fire and ice. So I was revisiting them kind of as I was playing. I didn't have to save them all for one chunk is more what I mean.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, but again, communication is that one Lamorne guy half-heartedly tells you the green crystals are important at the beginning. Miles doesn't know about this. He's like, oh, look at the green crystals. But most people, I don't think will realize as they're playing this game how important those are. And if the game was more clear about this, Samus, you're really going to need this legacy suit to finish the game. Number one, why? They don't I guess it comes alongside of you getting the fruit by filling up the thing. So okay, but it doesn't make it clear that this is something that is super important and necessary to finish the game. To me, it kind of felt like, it's a collectible. It's like, if I get 100%, I get a fun image as the game ends. It was not apparent how important it was. And then to also the point of the mech parts, why not have those accessible throughout the course of the game?
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
And so for both of these things, the presentation, the communication of the importance of these things, and also the accessibility, given that you can't get most of the crystals and you can't access the mech parts until way late in the game, what it means is that most people playing this game are going to end up with not realizing that those are even part of the game in the first place.
Yeah.
And certainly not know how important they are, and then they're going to be forced to do a big chunk of it at the end. And I am somewhere in the middle, in that I had to do all of the mech parts, and I thought those were not interesting to do. But I didn't have to do all the crystals because I'd been forewarned a little bit about it. But it creates this interesting thing where that's not a hard issue to solve. Of making the things collectible across the course of the game, or making it more obvious that you need to do this.
Or I guess make it that you need half the number of crystals you need.
that would also help. Or make the desert smaller so you can get them a little bit more consistently. There are so many small things that would not hamper your experience. Obviously, you didn't experience this as a negative.
Yeah. But
they are something that I obviously experienced, and I think most people will. And so I feel very confident in that this was a poorly thought through design decision. And that's how I feel about so many of these things. Like you certainly can enjoy them. A lot of people are enjoying this game, but I think on a fundamental level, there are so many things about this game that don't, like, somehow this game feels rushed to me. It feels kind of slapdash together. If we got these areas, put the fucking desert in the middle. We got the bike. You're not really going to do anything interesting with it. You got these upgrades. They're not going to be that different. It feels like they had a basic concept of, right, we're building off of Prime 1. And then, like, halfway through the game, like, oh, shit, characters, these green crystals, like, it doesn't feel stitched together to me, which is really unfortunate because cohesion, that's something I think both of us can agree.
Yeah.
Is something that is a strong appeal of Metroid.
Yes.
Whether it's interconnectivity or not, cohesion of the overall package and focus is something I think this game strongly and sorely lacks, because there are so many ideas that don't feel like they're fully stitched together or thought through in terms of how this will impact the flow or the experience or the pacing of the game.
Yeah. And again, I think this is such a good conversation, because I just think we speak about this game as two very different things. Like, for me, the game is a living object. For you, it's a one-time experience, and I think that this game is geared in one of those directions and not the other. And I agree, and I agree with you about how this game could be tuned better. It goes back to my point from earlier of for me, low impact issues and high impact issues. A lot of this stuff is low impact for me, and I think we kind of both represent the two different types of players mostly engaging with this game.
Sure.
And where it succeeds or fails for both.
Yeah, definitely. The final area to talk about is the final boss. Is that actually last section?
Yeah.
And how clunky and ham-fisted it is, and how it does not leave you with a particularly great taste in your mouth, narratively or mechanically. I love going to Chrono Tower. I love having my friends around me.
Yeah.
Cool. It's a cool build-up. I like ascending Chrono Tower and unlocking all this stuff. As I said, it's my favorite location in the game. And I'm a guy that loves a fucking Rise of Skywalker moment where all the characters come together and they fight the final boss. That is not my issue with this last section of the game. But Psylocke? Why is he in this game? He's in this game so they can have a final boss, but narratively, he is barely involved at all. You fight him, 2 times? Before that, actually, I think the early Psylocke fights are fine. I think they're actually some of the best fights in the game, in my opinion. But he feels so disconnected from the narrative that making him the final boss is like, okay, yeah, we've been, like, culturally, I've known that Psylocke is going to be the final boss, but they don't build him up in a meaningful way, and it makes him coming out, and, like, I'm like, why are you here? What's your motivation? Who the fuck are you? And then you fight him, and it's not a very good boss fight. It's just this weird, like, again, half-baked, where it's like, you really got to build up to your final boss a lot better than this. This is not satisfactory in my opinion.
Yeah, I saw some people saying that they felt it was one of the better final bosses in the series. Some hardcore Metroid fans. I wouldn't agree with that. I think that what Psylocke feels like to me to take it to Metroid Prime 1 is that it feels a lot like the Meta Ridley fight, which is the second to last fight in the game, and then the final fight is actually against the titular Metroid Prime. I think the best Metroid.
Also, no Metroids in this game other than the one in the suit on the cover. So
no, they're in all the bosses because Silex fucking
Metroids.
What? Yeah, they're all infected
So-
by Metroids. That's why they have
I didn't know
all
that.
those big like Metroid growths in them.
But here's a question, and you might know the answer
Yeah.
to this. Like genuinely, why is he doing this?
Why is Silex doing this?
Yeah.
So you got to be charitable to buy into this. But the way it goes is that Silex and I don't know if like Federation Force gets into the minutia of this, but Silex has been wronged, at least in his mind, by Samus on the battlefield when he was a Galactic Federation soldier.
I got that.
You see this in the cutscenes in the game.
Yeah,
And-
you see Metroid's Vietnam flashbacks.
Yes, and then you have
It's the same fucking cutscene like 4 times, but you see it.
you have Samus. Sorry, not Samus. You have Silex, and this is sort of in Federation Force. Basically has stolen a group of Metroids and he's building up this private army, and he's using his private army to take control of the space pirates, and as the leader of the space pirates he's going around trying to exact his revenge in the Galactic Federation. It's basic stuff, and it just so happens that he is there at the UTO research facility, attacking the facility. Samus shows up, and it just so happens that the one he attacks has the teleporter, and he and his fucking Metroids, but not the
Actual Metroids, yeah.
not the space pirates get sucked through.
Oh, yeah. Well, why don't they?
I don't know. They just don't.
Yeah. And yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
There you go. So there is a reason.
but-
I'm not
but-
saying
but
it's a
also-
great reason.
No, it's not a great reason. And I think it's actually a bad reason, because what we're presented with in this game is Silex being like on the battlefield, he's injured, he's like looking down his head, he's like really frustrated, and Samus like reaches out her hand to like help him or something, and I'm like, why the fuck are you mad? The game doesn't present anything to actually as a reason why they don't like each other.
Yeah, they want that. Clearly, Silex is obviously Silex isn't dead. Obviously, all of the Galactic Federation guys who are left behind on viewers are not dead.
Yeah.
My issue with it is that I think it is an unsuccessful cliffhanger, because I think it's an emotionally unsatisfying cliffhanger.
I agree.
Because above anything else, I just want to get the Galactic Federation Marines back home. I like the post-credit scene because I enjoy concluding and doing right by the Lemorn.
yeah.
I think that works well, but I think that the end of this game is as abrupt as the end of every other Metroid game, but it is way more perplexing than the other Prime games endings.
Yeah, and I think the other reason why I find that last moment so confusing is that, again, to my point of I don't think that Samus is well characterized in this game, and often she comes up as dismissive or rude or distant, is that there's no emotion to this. Is that, like, she just leaves them. And I'm like, I know the teleporter's, like, about to go away, but, like, they care so much about her, they are willing to sacrifice themselves.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
To have her be the only one.
Yeah.
And then she just leaves. And I'm like, you can't set up all these fucking characters that the game, I think, wants me to think that Samus cares about them. But then you continually present these scenarios in which I do not feel like she actually meaningfully cares about them. Because if she is a skilled, heroic, caring person, she'd save her fucking friends.
Well,
the people that have sacrificed their lives for her.
Yes, but also there's a way to read it as she failed in the end, and all she has is Takabi's necklace as tribute that she leaves in the Lemorn tree. Yeah. And where is Samus? She's somewhere on Tanamore, maybe, but she's in the fucking middle of nowhere. So I think that the way I look at the ending is that I think that Samus is maybe not in a better place than they're in. She's got to fucking figure out where the hell she is.
Yeah.
They're stuck there with Silex. She had no choice. She couldn't save them. She thought she did. She goes and fights Samus. She goes and fights Silex in the Milky Way, or wherever the hell they are.
Yeah.
They
go sit on top of a vinyl record.
Yeah, they come back, and then
go buy vinyls from Lost and Gold, by the way.
Thank you very much. And it ends up as a failure.
I'm actually glad, by the way, that you guys are not doing the Metroid Prime 4 vinyl. Because I don't think you'd be alive. I think you'd probably have a heart palpitation.
No, I don't want to work with Nintendo. I don't want Nintendo to be a business partner. I'm always going to be a fan. I'd fucking quit if we started working with Nintendo.
Continue.
I think I don't. I don't read it in the way that that it assassinates Samus's character as is a talking point online currently, and I think you make that case. I think in a more texturally grounded way.
Sure.
But I just think you got to take the easy ending. Just take the easy ending. Everybody makes it to the teleporter, and then Silex pops out.
Yeah, sure.
And he fucking made it.
Well, yeah, because also,
yeah.
So he has this ability to like rip space and time and make black holes. Oh, all right, sure, that's kind of cool. He certainly doesn't use that earlier on in the game when it would have made some more interesting boss fights, but I digress. But then he like, you remember that moment in Thor 1 when Loki like falls off of Asgard? And
no,
like,
but I'll go with you.
He like falls off the disc, and Sam's like, oh, and then he's gone. And then Samus, who does not have the ability to rip space and time or make black holes, rips space and time and returns to the top of Chrono Tower. And then, even though Silex fell, and who the fuck knows what that means, total fake out thing, he just makes his rip in space and time and comes back. And I'm like, this is like, for like 3 or 4 reasons, like narratively and textually unsatisfactory. It's like these moments of like weird Deus Ex Machina, just like, fuck it, like throw our hands up in the air. We got to create some kind of like moment at the end. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. You could have done a lot more with this. Because also to that point, like Chrono Tower and then that final boss fight, neither of them are particularly exciting. Like, I mean, the final boss fight's like, there's a lot of energy. There's all these fucking tentacles that you can't aim at for whatever the fuck reason, even though you've been able to aim at every other fucking enemy for the entire fucking game. You can't aim it.
It's the same thing. You got to free aim it. It's the same. You got to free aim Abarax at the beginning of the game. You got to free aim all kinds of shit.
Yeah, but they don't move as much as his fucking tentacles.
That's why that's why if you had all the shot upgrades as I did, you fucking electric shot upgrade, bang, gets rid of those fucking tentacles. That.
Damn it! Sounds like I need to replay Metroid Prime.
And then you use
for that moment to fight a bad boss fight.
And you do the legacy suit's shield. You let Silex hit you, breaks off another arm.
Yeah. No, I mean, the point I was more making is that I think an exciting culmination of some kind really would have gone a long way to like leaving a good taste in my mouth. To the point of using Viola or having Chrono Tower be like more of a dungeon. Like why aren't there? There's never a moment in this game where you're putting all your skills to the test. Where like all the abilities that you've gained up to this point that, as I've mentioned, and I will continue to harp on, are mostly fucking beams. You never like combine all this stuff in like a cool test of skill. The escape moment comes 2 hours plus before the end of the game. At the end of Flare Pool, if you do it in the way that I think most people will and that I did. And so it just the game kind of peters out in a really unsatisfactory way, in my opinion.
Yeah, the ending is what knocked it off 5 stars for me. I have it at 4.5 right now stars. You have it at 1.5 stars. It's almost it's not. What is it? Is it 1?
I can lower it a star. Then we'd be 5 together.
That's true. I was like, is it because if it would have because you would have to be at half. I'd have to be at 5 for the biggest possible gap of 4.5 stars. So right now we have to we have to settle for 3-star gap.
Wow. Anything else you want to say about this game?
No, I don't think so. I think this is it's been a great conversation. I was really interested to learn more about your perspective, and as I was sort of saying on Blue Sky, I think every take I've seen about the game is fair. I think that what retro,
except for Miles McKenzie hate, we don't accept that here in this house.
I do like Miles McKenzie. I think that this game is the victim of, above everything else, the fact that we waited so long for it.
Sure, I think that's definitely true. Well, and that's the other thing. Yeah. The final thing. Then, because I've been, and we have been, keeping this very close to the text, the design of the game, the pacing. These are things that are within the game. A big part of the reason why I find this game disappointing, and I think I started with this, but just to make it very clear, is that as something that took, but as a sequel, almost 20 years to get to, and releasing within the context of a Nintendo that is very experimental and forward-looking in so many of their games, this to me feels like a early Wii U sequel to Prime Corruption. Is that very little in this game feels like they truly learned from a lot of different things. It feels like a safe, iterative, next step sequel that, I mean, it looks great. It's in 4K resolution. There's not a frame dip in sight. But with a little bit less texture resolution, you would not an empty desert and bisected areas in an early Wii U game with safe power-ups would not have been a surprise. And so I think that is like contextually another really big disappointment to me is like you had so much time to rethink things, to make this work, to bake these ideas together into a cohesive whole, and ultimately so much of that is either safe or uncohesive that it feels like they were just like churning it out. And it's like, all right, it's been 4 years, time to put out another Prime game. This time we have a bike in it. Where it's like, no, it's actually been fucking 20 years, and you're on a system that's 7 times more powerful than the last time one of these games was new. It's like, it's just such a missed opportunity when you have so much time and manpower and money to make something truly revolutionary, truly innovative, that would fit more strongly alongside the rest of Nintendo's catalog.
Yeah, it's not, Retro's not the same team anymore. That's part of it.
Yeah, definitely true. 100%.
I think that there's a number of caveats that I've put on the game since the beginning that I just don't think are accepted in wider discourse about the game. Including, this was never going to be a Breath of the Wild quote-unquote moment for Metroid. Sure. I don't think it's possible to have that. That it was never going to be pushed by Nintendo as hard as we wanted it to be. It was impossible for it to live up to what it was going to be. Yeah. I think all of these things are just true. I agree. I think that what this game could have been in the cultural consciousness completely got away from the reality of what it was. I really look at this game and I'm like, yes, this is what comes out of what it took to get to this point. And I'm not even trying to narrativize about who made what the first studio was, when Retro took over. I'm just saying that this is it. None of that matters to me. The reality is a lot of the guys that made Metroid Prime 1 and petered off for 2 and then petered off for 3. And now we have this. And what we have to me is the only type of game you can make in that situation, which is let's try to jumpstart the engine here. Sure. And to me, there's a review of the game on The Guardian that I really liked from Casey McDonald, and they were talking about how they appreciated this like almost out of time anachronistic feel to the game. Your point about it feeling like it could have come out on the Wii U, I think is true, but that's not a negative point for me. And I think it just speaks again to the different buy-in we have for a game like this. This is not a situation where I have to reckon with a franchise I love changing that much, the way that we've had conversations about for a New Horizons or for a Tears of the Kingdom or whatever. This is Metroid Prime. For as much as it is going to invoke things from Zelda, for as much as it's going to introduce some new ideas, that I think, to me, if I'm having this conversation with a hardcore Metroid fan, instead of having the conversation with you, we would be poring over. They're not relevant for the kind of conversation we're having. Because I think when you get down to the meat of what the game is it is more Metroid Prime. And I think that premise alone is enough to understand where you and I fall on this. Yeah. I really think a lot of what it does or doesn't do well is entirely secondary to the fact that the core of the game is from 2007. I think that's what this game is, and I just don't hold it to the standard you do. And I'm not saying my standard is more in tune with what the text is. Sure. I just think that I am the guy who has played Prime 2 and Prime 3 a lot, and did want more of that, and I got it, and everybody else I think just has to kind of fucking figure out if they like that or not. And I think that's why the answer being no to me is the same as Metroid Prime 1 Remastered being no. I completely get it.
Yeah, and well, that's a nice way of putting like what you were saying of every perspective on this is like equally valid. And it's funny to hear what you're saying about you being a hardcore Metroid Prime fan and really being pleasantly surprised by how little actually the game changed. Yeah. When there's also an equally strong narrative boiling online in these fucking dark corners of the internet where that I can't believe they abandoned what made Metroid Prime special.
Yeah, it's and we're so deep into this now, and I think we're wrapping up. We can get a little bit more metatextual. Yeah. I think that there is a real inability to view Metroid as anything other than Super Metroid and Metroid 1 by big portions of the fan base. Sure. And again, I think this is partially an issue curated by Nintendo by not making the other games available, by not being more clear about that. But I wouldn't even go as far as to say that this is really a Metroidvania.
No,
and
absolutely not.
And I would make the
100%
same
not.
argument about
No.
Metroid Prime 3. Like, I
Sure.
just...
Yeah, 100%.
I just think that people were not equipped for what the game is. And I think that the fault lies with Nintendo. The fault is not with anybody other than Nintendo. I think that if this game... Here's the two... We're talking about things you can change in the game to make it better. Let me present this to you. This game is announced in 2023 with the same, let's say the same trailers at the same points in time. This game is announced in 2023 and it says a Metroid Prime : Beyond.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And we didn't have 8 years to stew on what might not be happening to invoke, because the other thing is to invoke this being 18 years since the last Metroid Prime is to ignore the fact that there's been Metroid Prime games after this. Because
that is true.
Prime 4 connotes something real heavy and real specific. Sure. And I think that they probably said, hey, look, it worked for Pikmin 4. We're gonna pull the hat trick. It's probably gonna work for Galaxy 3 next November. I'm putting that in the books as my prediction.
Yeah.
But I just think that so much of this is optical. It was not to undermine any of the issues of text at all, but I'm just saying that if this game had been presented differently as it is, I just think that things would be so different. Because I think Nintendo allowed them this game to get way, 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 way far away from them.
Yeah. I think Metroid Other N would probably be... It'd probably be better.